You're unhappy in your marriage, so you start seeing someone behind your spouse's back. You meet in a secluded lover's lane, and while you're both getting handsy, you hear something. You think it's probably just an animal. Nobody's out here. It's too far away from town. You get back to what you were doing when in a split second, your date is pulled out of the car. You're scared and confused. Who even knows where you are? You soon get your answer. It's a big, terrifying looking man with no skin. Wait, what? No, that's not right. You tell yourself that you must be having a nightmare. This isn't real. You can't even live that long without your skin. And then you say, well, this guy obviously can because he's standing right in front of me. Blood dripped from his exposed muscles and his tendons, and his organs still beat and they pulsed like they did when he was still alive. His shirt was half buttoned, his pants were full of tears. He's who the locals in Wallen, Tennessee call Old Skin Tom, and he is no fan of cheaters. Let me give you a little bit of a backstory on Tom. Tom was a moonshiner from the 1920s. He was supposedly a good-looking guy that was tall, athletic, he was witty and charming, but he also happened to be a big-time player. He wasn't a cheater per se. He would just go from one girl to the next. He would date one for a little while, dump her, and go to the next one. He was the type of guy that women gravitated towards. Few women said no to Tom. No woman could ever get him to commit. Tom lived in a very small town in East Tennessee, and since he had dated pretty much every woman there, he figured that he should try the next town over. You know, a town where no one knows his reputation as a playboy. As he's spending time in town, he sees the lovely Miss Eleanor. In the South, we sometimes say Eleanor. She was the prettiest girl that he had ever seen. Eleanor was tall and very pretty with blue eyes, jet black hair, and porcelain skin. Tom started asking about her around town, and he found out that she was loved by pretty much everybody, and she was always helping out at church. And one day at a town function, Tom was a little tipsy, and he saw Miss Eleanor, and he asked her to dance. They ended up drinking and dancing well into the night. He fell madly in love with Eleanor, and they would eventually be seen all over town. Eventually, Eleanor's husband Henry found out because people started talking. A lot of ladies liked Henry, but he only had eyes for Eleanor. He and Eleanor had been married for 2 years at this point. Henry was a big guy. He grew up working on his family's farm, and he was so tall that he had to bend down when he walked through most doors. He didn't believe that Eleanor would do anything like that to him. She was a woman of morals, after all. He had been working out of town for a logging company so that he could earn more money and move them to a nicer place. And one day while in town, Henry saw Tom and Eleanor together. He was obviously hurt and embarrassed, but that hurt turned to anger and red-hot rage. He had to teach them a lesson. You don't mess around on Henry. He followed them around for a few days until they were in a secluded area. With his uncontrollable rage, Henry ended up pulling Tom out of the car, almost pulling it off of his hinges. Henry turned himself in, and he doesn't remember much of what happened afterwards, so this part of the story isn't completely clear from his perspective. What we know from this point on comes from police accounts of what they saw. If he hadn't turned himself in, their bodies and what was left of Tom's probably never would have been found. All they found of Tom was his husk hanging from a tree. Henry had strung Tom up from a tree, removed his clothes, and skinned him alive from his feet up. And Henry was known for being the best hunter around, and he was great at skinning animals. Tom's skin was removed in one piece. Eleanor was found with a deep gash in her belly, and folks say that Tom didn't know that Eleanor was married and that he didn't deserve what happened to him. So Tom now hangs out in lovers' lanes looking for cheaters to punish. With the Skin Tom legend, Tom doesn't skin the female characters for some reason. They may be wounded, but that's about it. It's the men who feel his wrath. The process of skinning a person alive or flaying has been used as a form of torture or execution for centuries, and the process can be a little complicated. The victim's skin was sometimes used to deter others from committing a similar act. The victim doesn't die immediately, unfortunately, hence the word torture. Death could take hours or even days. Because skin is tough, it needs to be softened first. And this was done by having the person out in the sun until they were covered in sunburns, or by putting them in boiling water. The burned, swelled skin was easier to penetrate, and the skin was then sliced and pulled away, revealing everything gross underneath. Now, with skinning or flaying, what kills a person could be shock, blood loss, loss of bodily fluids, infections, or hypothermia. Hypothermia would occur because our skin is our natural insulation, and we need it for maintaining our body temperature. The author of The Complete Idiot's Guide to Urban Legends says that there are two morals in this story. One is that men should stick to local women because it's easier to determine with accuracy whether they're attached to violent, jealous males, and women should be wary of handsome, fast-talking out-of-towners because they're probably a lot more dangerous than they appear. Skinned Tom predates the Hook urban legend that also came about because of lovers' lanes and the crimes that have happened there. Author H.P. Lovecraft said in his essay, The Supernatural Horror in Literature, that our greatest fear is the fear of unknown. It could be fear of the future, fear of strangers, or fear of the dark. The Hook legend was a cautionary tale warning teenagers about the dangers of premarital sex, especially in more conservative areas in the South, which is where I'm from. When you're in a secluded location, criminals feel that you're an easier target. If you're in a car in a secluded location, your guard will be down and you're extremely vulnerable. There have been several murders and attacks at lovers' lanes, and I'll link a list of some of them below. There's also the urban legend, the dead boyfriend or the boyfriend's death. It goes like this. A couple are out on a date. They run out of gas in the middle of nowhere, so the boyfriend walks to town to get some. And the girl stays in the car and she keeps hearing something scratching above her. She figures that it's probably just tree branches, so she just brushes that off and she closes her eyes for a little bit. Well, then the police drive up and then they walk over to the car. He asked what she was doing as his eyes kept looking above the car. He tells her to walk to the patrol car and get in the back seat, but do not look back, look straight ahead. But unfortunately, she didn't listen. She sees her boyfriend's headless body over the roof of the car, and his fingernails are what was making the scratching sounds. The fact that we can't verify the information in an urban legend doesn't stop us from enjoying and retelling them, because it's fun being around a campfire and telling scary stories, no matter how old or young a person may be. We know that Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, and Freddy Krueger aren't real people, but we still enjoy the movies. Sometimes in horror movies, the villain may sometimes be loosely based on a previous killer in the past, but that isn't always the case. Legend and real life often has a tendency to merge. So legends show what people are feeling at a particular time. What were they afraid of when this legend was created? What made society anxious when the legend was born? What are some of your favorite urban legends? Let me know below. See you in the next video.